Perhaps never before has humanity spoken so much about freedom as in this era. Freedom of choice, freedom of self-expression, freedom to pursue dreams, freedom to live as one wishes. Yet the more we talk about freedom, the more constrained people seem to feel. Constrained by the pressure to succeed, to be happy, to prove one's worth. Constrained by memories that cannot be released, fears not yet faced, desires that are never satisfied. And so, in a world that appears infinitely open, many still live with a sense of suffocation and heaviness, as if carrying an invisible backpack that grows heavier with things that are no longer necessary. Have you ever asked yourself, what is really holding you back? Not circumstances. Not necessarily other people. Very likely, it is what you are gripping tightly within your own mind. Thoughts of right and wrong. Old stories about yourself. Expectations placed on others. Resentments that have not dissolved. Dreams once left unfinished but never truly let go. We often believe that if we just had more achievements, more recognition, more love, more security, then freedom would arrive. But the paradox is this: the more we add, the heavier the mind becomes. The more we hold on, the more we lose our innate lightness. In Buddhist teachings, there is a truth that is very simple yet very difficult to accept. The root of suffering does not lie in what we lack, but in how much we cling. Clinging to the self. Clinging to emotions. Clinging to viewpoints. Clinging to the idea that life must unfold according to our wishes. That very clinging gives rise to fear, fear of loss, fear of change, fear of no longer being ourselves if we let go. And because of fear, we grip even tighter. We cling to the past. We cling to titles and identities. We cling to relationships that no longer nourish the soul. We call this protecting ourselves, but in truth, it is how we imprison ourselves in a subtle cage of our own making. Letting go, therefore, is often misunderstood. Many think letting go means defeat, escape, loss, abandoning responsibility, or turning away from life. But from the perspective of awakened wisdom, letting go is not losing, it is returning things to their rightful place. Letting go does not weaken you, it releases energy that has been trapped. Letting go does not make you indifferent, it allows you to love without possession. Letting go does not strip life of meaning, it returns to you inner freedom, the kind of freedom that does not depend on external circumstances. Look deeply into yourself. Perhaps you have been carrying an old pain for a very long time, so familiar that you no longer recognize its weight. Perhaps you are living to please others, yet calling it responsibility or love. Perhaps you are chasing an image of the ideal person, drawn by society, quietly exhausted because you can never reach it. These things are not wrong. But when they become what you cannot let go of, they begin to control you. And when you are being controlled, freedom becomes nothing more than a distant luxury. True freedom, in the spirit of Buddhism, is not getting whatever you want, but no longer being bound by wanting. It is not controlling life, but no longer being tossed about inwardly by life. It is a state in which you can walk amid impermanence without panic, face loss without collapse, love deeply without losing yourself. And the door to that state does not lie in holding on tighter, but in learning how to let go at the right time, in the right way, with mindfulness and compassion. Most of us were never taught how to let go. We were only taught how to achieve, accumulate, protect, and prove. So when we hear the words, letting go, the mind immediately resists. But if you dare to pause and listen more deeply, you will realize, what you are truly seeking is not more freedom on the outside, but less burden on the inside. And the journey toward that freedom does not begin by changing the world, but by starting with a very quiet question: what am I holding on to, and is it truly necessary for my peace? That is where this story begins. Not to teach you to let go of everything, but to look together at this: what to let go of, how to let go, and why only by daring to let go can human beings touch a freedom deeper than any ordinary definition. Continuing from that initial recognition, we begin to go deeper into a more important question: why is it so difficult for human beings to let go, even when we clearly know that it is precisely this clinging that causes our suffering? The answer does not lie in intellect, but very deep within the structure of each person's mind. From a young age, we learn to hold on in order to feel safe. We hold on to our parents' love, we hold on to praise, we hold on to the feeling of being recognized. As we grow older, this holding becomes more subtle, holding on to social roles, holding on to reputation, holding on to the image of ourselves in the eyes of others. Each time we hold on, we believe we are building another layer of protection. Yet we fail to realize that these very layers of protection gradually turn into chains. They define who we are, how we must live, and what we are not allowed to lose. Freedom, therefore, is narrowed little by little, until we become accustomed to living in bondage without even being aware of it. In Buddhism, clinging is not only attachment to material things, but more deeply, attachment to ideas. The idea of me. The idea of mine. The idea that everything must be stable, must be certain, must follow the order we are familiar with. But the nature of life is impermanence. Everything arises and ceases, comes and goes, changing continuously in every moment. When the mind stubbornly demands permanence in a world that is always in motion, conflict arises. And that conflict is suffering. We suffer not because life changes, but because we do not accept change. We suffer not because others leave, but because we believe they must stay. We suffer not because negative emotions arise, but because we want them to disappear immediately. In each of these moments, we are gripping reality with a tense hand. And the more tense that grip, the more exhausted we become. Letting go, in the spirit of mindfulness, is not an action that happens in a single explosive moment, but a very slow process of recognition. Recognizing, this is fear. This is desire. This is an old pain speaking. When we can name what we are holding on to, its power begins to diminish. We are no longer swept away unconsciously, but begin to have space to breathe, to see, to choose how we respond. There is a very common misunderstanding that if we let go, we will become cold, distant, and lacking in motivation to live. But the truth is quite the opposite. When we are no longer bound by the fear of loss, we live more authentically. When we no longer have to protect a fragile ego, we connect more deeply. When we no longer chase after the need to become someone, we are finally able to be fully present in everything we do. Letting go does not take away vitality, it releases the vitality that has been trapped in anxiety and defensiveness. Observe the moments when you react most strongly: anger, jealousy, hurt, insecurity. Behind each of these reactions there is often an unseen attachment. It may be attachment to being right. It may be attachment to the feeling of being disrespected. It may be attachment to an expectation that others must understand you. When what we cling to is not fulfilled, the mind immediately churns. But if we dare to turn back and ask, if I let this expectation go, what would happen? We begin to touch freedom. That freedom is not loud. It is not a feeling of excitement or victory. It is very quiet. Very light. It is the feeling of no longer having to resist what is. No longer having to strain to become a better version of oneself in someone else's eyes. No longer having to carry the past like a suspended sentence hanging over one's head. In that lightness, we still work, still love, still make effort, but we no longer trade inner peace for external results. One of the deepest attachments human beings have is attachment to the story about themselves. We repeat that story over and over in the mind: I am someone who was once hurt, I am someone who is not good enough, I am someone who must always try hard, I am someone who is strong, I am someone who is not allowed to be weak. These stories help us locate ourselves. But at the same time they limit us. Letting go does not mean denying the past, but not allowing the past to continue controlling the present. When we see that we are not only that story, a space of freedom begins to open. Buddhism does not invite us to escape from life, but invites us to enter life with open hands. Open hands can receive, but they can also release when needed. A clenched hand seems to hold on to more, but in reality it cannot feel anything. True freedom does not lie in how much we can control, but in our willingness to allow everything to come and go, without losing inner ease. When we understand this deeply, we begin to live more slowly. Not because life becomes less hurried, but because the mind is no longer pulled in too many directions at once. We begin to distinguish what truly requires effort and what needs to be released. What is genuine responsibility, and what is merely a burden created by habit and fear. And it is precisely within that mindful discernment that freedom is no longer a distant ideal, but becomes a very real, very close experience, present in each breath of everyday life. As the recognition of clinging becomes increasingly clear, a very subtle movement begins to take place within the inner world. We no longer rush to find ways to eliminate everything, but learn to be with things without being governed by them. This is a crucial point that many people often overlook. Letting go is not about forcing ourselves to be different, but about seeing so deeply that the need to hold on as before simply dissolves. When the light of mindfulness shines, darkness fades on its own, without the need to drive it away. In everyday life, clinging often hides itself in very familiar forms. It may appear as persistent worry about the future. We believe that if we do not think enough, if we do not prepare carefully enough, everything will collapse. Yet the more we worry, the more restless the mind becomes. We fail to realize that the future is, by its nature, not under the absolute control of anyone. Letting go here does not mean letting go of responsibility, but letting go of the illusion that we can control everything. When that illusion is released, the mind becomes clearer, and necessary actions arise naturally, no longer driven by fear. Another form of clinging is attachment to emotions. We want to keep pleasant emotions and push away unpleasant ones. But emotions, like waves on the surface of the sea, arise and pass away according to conditions. When we identify ourselves with emotions, we rise and fall with each wave. When we know that we are experiencing emotions, but are not those emotions, a distance begins to appear. This distance does not make us indifferent, it keeps us from being submerged. And this mindful distance itself is a very deep form of letting go. There are pains we believe that if we let go of them, it means betraying ourselves, betraying memories, betraying what we have been through. But in truth, continuing to carry pain is not always an act of loyalty, sometimes it is simply a habit. We become accustomed to the role of the wounded one, accustomed to viewing life through the lens of loss. Letting go here does not mean forgetting, but allowing ourselves to continue living without constantly needing to confirm that we have been hurt. When we no longer cling to that role, a new space for healing opens. Buddhism speaks of the middle way, neither leaning toward forcing oneself to let go nor sinking into clinging. The middle way is the path of clear seeing. When we see clearly, we naturally know when to hold and when to release. Holding with mindfulness does not create suffering, releasing with mindfulness does not create loss. It is mindfulness itself, not the act of holding or letting go, that determines freedom. There is a very profound truth. Many things we think we are holding are actually holding us. A relationship, a viewpoint, an ambition, a fear. We believe we are in control, yet we live in a constant state of guarding, worrying, and defensiveness. When we dare to ask, if I no longer cling to this, what remains of me, we may feel emptiness at first. But it is precisely this emptiness that becomes the space where freedom can appear. For only when there is space can something new arise. Letting go is also closely related to accepting the imperfection of life and of ourselves. We suffer because we want everything to be complete, to go exactly as we wish, to contain no flaws. But life does not operate according to our ideals. When we let go of expectations of perfection, we begin to appreciate what is present. Not because it is perfect, but because it is real. And within that reality, there is a very deep peace that requires no conditions. One of the most difficult attachments to recognize is the attachment to having to understand everything. We want clear answers for every event: why this happened, why that person behaved that way, why we ended up in this situation. But there are things in life that cannot be understood through ordinary reasoning. When we accept that not everything needs, or is able, to be explained, the mind becomes softer. That softness does not make us weaker. It allows us to be flexible and adaptable, rather than rigid and suffering. Gradually, as we practice letting go in small things, we begin to feel a profound change. The breath becomes lighter. Reactions are no longer so extreme. We are no longer pulled into invisible struggles to protect the ego. We still have viewpoints, but we do not need to impose them. We still have dreams. But we no longer equate our self-worth with achieving or not achieving them. In this state, freedom is no longer something to be sought, but something to be lived. Letting go, in the end, is not a destination, but a way of being present. Being present with life in openness, without excessive defensiveness, without withdrawing out of fear. When we live this way, each moment carries the quality of freedom, regardless of external circumstances. And from this very foundation, the path toward inner liberation begins to become clearer, not as a distant ideal, but as a very real possibility, quietly waiting to be recognized within this very life. When we reach the very end of the journey of letting go, we suddenly realize a very quiet yet profoundly deep truth. Freedom was never something to be sought far away. It does not lie in changing circumstances, it does not lie in becoming a different person, and it does not lie in attaining anything more. Freedom has always been there, it has simply been obscured by too many things we have been holding on to without realizing it. Letting go, ultimately, is not about abandoning life, but about abandoning the battle with life. When we no longer resist what is, the energy once consumed by resistance is returned to life itself. We begin to live more lightly, not because life becomes less heavy, but because the mind no longer carries what is unnecessary. In that state, even difficulties no longer take the form of enemies, but become silent teachers, teaching us how to be softer, deeper, and more truthful with ourselves. You may come to realize that the more you are able to let go, the more fully you live. You love without fear of loss. You engage deeply without trading away. Inner peace. You accept failure without losing your sense of self-worth. And most importantly, you begin to trust the flow of life, not with blind faith, but with a deep understanding that everything comes and goes, and that you do not need to cling in order to be safe. True freedom is not the absence of constraints, but the absence of being inwardly controlled by them. You still have responsibilities, relationships, and roles in life. But you no longer identify your entire being with those roles. When something changes or dissolves, you feel pain, but you do not collapse. You feel sadness, but you do not lose yourself. Within that steadiness, there is a kind of ease that no circumstance can take away. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of letting go is that it brings us back to the original simplicity of being. Before we carried names, titles, and expectations, before we were taught to become someone, we were already a living being capable of feeling, loving, and being aware. Letting go of each layer of clinging is also a step-by-step return to that essence. And when we touch it, even briefly, we understand why the wise have said, freedom is not about adding more, but about subtracting. This journey does not need to be rushed. Letting go is not a task to be completed, but a way of living that is cultivated each day. Each time you notice you are holding too tightly and gently smile as you relax, that is already freedom. Each time you allow things to be imperfect without blaming yourself, that is already freedom. Each time you choose mindfulness over unconscious reaction, that is freedom living through you. If something in this video touches something very real within you, take a moment to write down your reflections in the comments section. Not to be right or wrong, but to listen more clearly to yourself through each word. And if you feel that this journey of deep understanding, slow living, gentle letting go is something you wish to continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Each subscription is not only a form of support, but also a reminder that there are many people walking together in search of inner freedom, in silence, in mindfulness, and in compassion. Thank you for staying until the very last moments. May it be that when this video comes to an end, what remains in you is not a feeling of needing to change immediately, but a very subtle lightness, as if a hand has just been released. And perhaps, from that very small moment, the door to true freedom has already begun to open.